Earlier this month, I watched and reviewed A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. For those of you that remember, I didn't think too highly of it, and I actually got some pushback on it, people telling me it's better than I give it credit for, and that it's much better than Part 6. I hadn't seen Part 6 in probably around 2 decades, but I remember loving it, and it's probably the movie I rented most at the local Family Video. So today I wanted to see if that movie holds up, and I checked out Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare.
I'm going to start off this review by admitting this is a bad movie. The acting is bad, the characters are unbelievable, just about everything about it is stupid. Almost nothing about this movie works. But I love it. Watching it back, it's so much worse than I remembered, but man, it's great. The movie begins by telling you what you're about to see takes place 10 years from now. This movie came out in 91, but they meant 10 years from the events of Dream Child, not 10 years from this movie's release date, which would make more sense. So this movie actually takes place in 1999. During that time, Freddy has successfully managed to murder every child and teenager in Springwood, Ohio. Overcome with grief, the people of the town have all lost their minds. But we don't get much time exploring that aspect. Now, with a lot more free time, Freddy has been getting bored. So he manages to get a teenage John Doe to unwittingly do his bidding and bring Freddy to a new place that he can terrorize. Freddy's Dead drops all pretenses of being scary. The first time you see him, he's dressed as the Wicked Witch of the West, flying on a broomstick and telling John Doe, "I'll get you, my pretty, and your little soul, too." And believe it or not, that's not the craziest moment in this movie, or even close to it. The John Doe eventually gets taken to a rundown shelter outside of Springwood where we meet the only other people who matter. A psychiatrist, a doctor, a stoner, played by Breckin Meyer, making his film debut, a kid with a hearing aid, and a really angry teen named Tracy who hates being touched or even talked to. There's not much chemistry between any of them because Tracy is kind of busy yelling at everyone, and they don't seem to particularly like being around each other. We're treated to some weird Freddy shenanigans, but things really go off the wall once they end up back at Springwood. Now, their driving leads to one of my most rewound moments of all time. They're completely lost, and one of the kids, Carlos, has fallen asleep while Tracy is angrily demanding the map. When he tries to give it to her, it keeps growing, and he's eventually drowning in the map, and then he sees 2 words written on a section of it. "You're fucked." Tracy by this point is super annoyed and yells for the map, waking Carlos up. He awkwardly stares for a second before firing back, "Well, the map says we're fucked." It's really a perfect moment. I mentioned earlier how the town is crazy, and when they roll up on the Springwood Town Fair, everyone stares uncomfortably. At one point we get Roseanne Barr and Tom Arnold, for some reason, in cameo roles to go along with Alice Cooper and Johnny Depp's short scene. Depp and Cooper I get. Johnny Depp's first role was in the original, and Cooper is an icon and a big fan of the series. But Roseanne and Tom Arnold? Then we go to a school where a teacher is teaching an empty classroom Freddy facts, like 1493, Freddy sailed across the sea. Yeah, the whole town is nuts. After more hijinks, they end up in the former home of Nancy Thompson, and that's when things get weird. I don't want to give too much away, but the stoner, Spencer, gets sucked into a video game by Freddy, who then makes several unapproved Nintendo references, including one involving the Power Glove, if any of you are old enough to remember that. And sadly, that never fails to get a laugh out of me. I should hate this movie, but I just can't bring myself to do it. Freddy is so much fun in this one. He's wiped out the entire kid population of a whole town, and when you've killed that many people and you have so much power at your disposal, I can see an entity like him having a desire to play with his victims more. There's more to this movie, and they do give you a little more backstory than any of the other films did, but it's nothing special. With this one, you're just here for the slapstick. This movie is bad, yes, but it could have been worse. Peter Jackson from Lord of the Rings actually wrote a draft for this movie that was rejected. In his script, Freddy was weak, so for kicks, the teenagers of Springwood would have drug slumber parties, enter the dream world, and then just beat up Freddy. I don't know how his draft ends, but the premise of it, I don't like at all. Freddy's Dead doesn't take itself seriously at all, but it's still fun and it does follow the rules set forth in the original. There are multiple moments in this movie that made me laugh out loud because it's just so ridiculous. I have to imagine Robert Englund had a whole lot of fun doing this movie. Plus, Carlos's death is his favorite in the entire series. The movie was billed as the final nightmare, but that lasted 3 years when New Nightmare came along and made Freddy scary again, followed by Freddy vs. Jason that went back to a more funny and menacing monster. Like I said multiple times, it's a bad movie, and I think if you don't have fond memories of it, you won't like it. But you know what? It's a whole lot of stupid fun. 7 Dr. Chainsaws.